You're listening to the Monday Night Community Show with Daniel on BRFM.
So we are out and about here at BRFM on the Monday Night Community Show, and we're talking all about this year's Sheppey Horticultural Society Flower and Vegetable Show. We're joined with Dave Howell. Now, Dave, it's always good to see you, and it's good to have the opportunity to come back here again.
It's always great to have you come and visit us, as I say. And the weather is perfect again, isn't it? Absolutely. Twice this year, you've been down to see us, and the weather has been superb, actually. Yeah, this is our 50th show, and I'm very proud to be chairman of the society on its 50th or its anniversary. And as you can see from behind you, there's a merry buzz going on behind. People have finally started coming in because we open to the public from 3 o'clock. And quite remarkable that we've managed to actually put on such a good show despite the weather conditions that we've had throughout this year. Difficult times, as a couple of things are sort of deficient. We haven't quite got the chrysanthemum that we would actually like to have, but there are some dahlias. But it's amazing to see the amount of vegetable that's actually come out of the woodwork, so to speak, and with the weights. And just behind us are probably the two biggest pumpkins I've ever had to try to mishandle more than anything.
Well, I was going to ask you about those. They were one of the first things I see as I come, and I could see them just at the back of the hall, and I thought I must have a look at those.
You remember your last visit when you were talking to Renato,
yeah.
And obviously the subject of his pumpkin came up, and we finally managed to weigh it. It took 3 of us to lift it.
Well, I was going to say, how did you get it down? Because it was growing up high on his greenhouse, I think.
With great difficulty, and we gave him the responsibility of getting it off his compost heap, I can assure you. I stood there and I stood out of the way because I thought, I hope he's got enough stalk on there to be able to lift it off his compost heap. If you remember, it was pretty high up. Eventually we weighed it on a weigh scale, and it weighed in at something like 74 kilos. Now that's about 150 odd pounds, what have you. But I wanted, being chairman, I had the choice. I could nitpick and say it's not 74, it's 73 and a half kilos. But it's quite remarkable because just behind you there are 2 very large pumpkins, and yet the other one is just slightly over half that particular weight. Quite remarkable that 2 of roughly equal size of such huge weight disparity, but 73 and a half. We have yet to decide how to get it back to Renato's plot because he will be on holiday apparently. So somebody else has the responsibility of getting it back to him. But it's great to have it here because it's not a class that we've actually had a lot of. Over the last 2 or 3 years, we've decided to have the heaviest pumpkin. So we've gone from 1 to about 4 or 5 actually. But to grow something that big on the top of his compost heap, and all the time I was sort of crossing my fingers and crossing everything else, thinking, don't drop it, Renato, because it won't half make a mess.
So is it just luck that something grows that big, or is it a special variety or a way of growing it?
It could be a special variety. Do you remember when you came and saw us a couple of weeks ago? We were talking about what you can grow on compost heaps, and the number of people who are now growing squashes and pumpkins on top. It's the best place for them, actually, because they need such great goodness to come out, so much nutrient. The compost heap is the best possible place. The only problem is when you've got something that big, you've then sort of got to decide, how am I going to get it off it back onto the ground? We put it in a wheelbarrow with a blanket underneath it and cushions to actually cushion it to make sure it didn't sort of fall over. The amusing thing was Renato went the wrong way. My car was parked the other way and he had to turn around somewhat. And we've got some narrow paths. He had to turn around and come back. You can imagine the look of disgust on his face when I said, I'm parked over that way, Ron. But there you go. It's great to have it here because it has been something of a talking point. What he's going to do with it afterwards is entirely up to him.
I was going to ask that.
I lose responsibility of it when I delivered it back to his greenhouse on the plot. But there you go. It's great fun. It's one of the fun items. There are other fun items that we've actually got. 2 of the classes which we've found burgeoning this year are Sunday lunch for 2. When we started that a couple of years ago, there were maybe 2-3 participants in that. It's now about 9 or 10 participants, and you would not believe, how did that win? Why didn't I come first? This is the nice part about it, actually. There's another one there over there, which is 5 a day.
Right.
That's a good general class for lots of people who say, well, I can't put my stuff into this, I can't put my vegetables in because they simply won't get anywhere. But that kind of class is open to just about everybody and anybody who wants to actually take part. It doesn't have to look artistic, if you understand what I mean.
Yeah.
It can be a class which you can just put it in, and it's the variety which it's being judged on, rather than how good it actually looks. Some of the classes inevitably are going to be how good they are. Those two classes are good, general, fun classes, which anybody can take part in.
We are at the moment talking to Dave Hale. We're out and about in Sheerness. We're at the Sheppey Horticultural Society's Golden Jubilee Flower and Vegetable Show at the moment. So we are continuing to talk to Dave Hale. We're out and about at the Sheppey Horticultural Society's Golden Jubilee Flower and Vegetable Show at the De Lacy Hall in Sheerness. Dave, I was wondering what else has done well this year?
Well, if you look behind you and as you walk through the show, we've been blessed by not having any blight around. So last year, for instance, tomatoes, very poorly showing, simply because of the problem with blight. This year we've been extremely lucky. So from having 2 or 3 participants last year on that particular class of tomatoes, we have any number of... that also augurs well for the competition, if you understand what I mean. It's not just a case then of somebody getting an automatic first and somebody getting an automatic second. Here you really are vying for that nice little certificate that says first prize. Potatoes also are doing quite well this year, actually. Although, funnily enough, I was digging some of my later potatoes yesterday. They are large hen's egg size. I would have expected them to be 2-3 times up on that side. That's a brand which is pretty popular where the Sheppey Horticultural Society is concerned. A lot of people grow Desiree, and so far they've not been too good. That's a problem with the weather. Somebody actually said above ground it's been pretty good this year. Below ground, not so good, unfortunately. So tomatoes have done extremely well, and we've got any number of participants in that. But the potatoes, not quite so good, in fact.
I suppose that's one of the things that perhaps the show shows up at the end of the year, is what things have done well and what things haven't.
Precisely, that's very, very true. As we hope you will walk around and have a look afterwards. You will see that certain things not so good, certain things very good. And tomatoes pick themselves out because mostly they're red, and you will notice the number of varieties actually. Other things like you will also, apart from the pumpkins, and I keep going back to the pumpkins, but you'll notice some of the marrows are pretty big as well. I think one of our participants actually has grown a 28-pound marrow, which is quite remarkable when you think about it. Other things, flowers. We were a bit short this year, unfortunately, with the flower side of it. Lots of dahlias, but there are no chrysanthemums this year, unfortunately. That's part and parcel of the fact that people tend not to grow chrysanthemums themselves. It's weather conditions and what have you. The dahlias have been pretty good this year, I must admit. I've put some dahlias in myself for the first time. I've never grown a dahlia in my life, and it was quite remarkable. The good thing about that is that people are prepared to pass on their expertise. Yeah. And people don't mind being asked, what do I do next? What do I do next? How do I do this? How do I do that? You don't make a pest of yourself so much so that they say, go away, you're in direct competition with me. But the nice thing is that they will pass that information on to you. I've learned an awful lot. And one of my fellow allotmenteers who went round with the judge actually came back and he said that was enjoyable, because the judge was passing on information. He was imparting good information, which will stand that allotmenteer in good stead. So, yeah, it's a two-way process, actually. Very enjoyable. It's hard work for a judge, because he's really having... And the judging is by RHS standards, so it's well judged, in effect. There would be no point in just sort of glibly passing a judgment, if you know what I mean. Very good. The judging is very good. And it's well worth it. And there's a positive feedback to the person. For instance, the guy going round with the judge. If somebody comes up to him afterwards and says, why did this happen, or why did the judge say that? He has the knowledge to be able to say, it's for this reason or that reason. A couple of people have perhaps sometimes misconstrued actually what should be within the class. So my fellow volunteer can actually pass on that information. It's because of X, it's because of Y, it's because of Z. But finally, the upshot is it's fun. It's good fun. There's competition, but it's actually a good, fun process.
We are at the moment talking to Dave Hale here at BRFM. We're out and about and we're at the Sheppey Horticultural Society's Flower and Vegetable Show at the Lacey Hall in Sheerness. We're out and about and we're at the Sheppey Horticultural Society's Flower and Vegetable Show here in Sheerness. We're firstly joined with Sil. Firstly, thank you very much for speaking to us.
Thank you very much. This was I'm on about now the first show. I was chairman. And Mr. Sedge was the secretary, and we started the show off in the Workingmen's Club in them days, the back, and we had that for many years. I was chairman for 27 years of that showing, so I've quite a bit of experience. When I first joined, it was called the Sheerness Cottage Gardens Association, which we didn't feel in them days was the right sort of name, so we had it registered as the Sheppey Horticultural Society, because to be cottage gardeners, and we was mainly allotments, it didn't sort of work out. But we had quite a lot of members, because in them days there was no nurseries on the island at all. It was just pure, we was doing the selling. In fact, we actually sold from air raid shelters, believe it or not, in them days. I don't know whether you remember the old Anderson shelters.
Yeah, I've seen them. Yeah. We had a couple that was done in Sheerness as horticultural society sheds, and actually I got into it by making a silly mistake, because Mr. Sedge was secretary down at Medway Road, and one day I had an allotment down there, and I could see he was busy with a big long queue of people queuing for stuff like, compost and fertilisers and that. And I walked over to him and said, "Would you like a hand?" Whether I made the biggest mistake of my life, I don't know, but from there I really got into gardening. I even had a time when I went to Adlow College for a while, just to really gen up on the stuff. But all I can say that I've had many years, and I'm 84 on Monday, so I've had a good few years with the society. I'm now the president. I have been for a good many years, but I don't take any other activity, only going down the sheds and buying stuff still. I've now given up my allotments, and I gave up judging 9 years ago because I felt that, I had to give up because my car gave up. Right.
And I didn't see at the age of 75 buying a new car, or size, which by then I'd have to, as you know, I'd have to keep getting new licences because they didn't carry on after 70. Anyway, the shows, I've seen some comings and goings of people. There's still only one exhibitor that I know here now,
right,
that used to show when I used to show, before I went and took over judging. Because at one time I was the head judge for the Kent Allotments and Gardens Council. I had a posh name.
So did you have to travel around with that job?
Oh yes, I've been as far as Brighton.
Right.
And up as far as Crystal Palace. Between Brighton and Crystal Palace, we used to judge all the allotments.
So all shows like this one today?
Yes, and all shows like this. I was the head judge, and you can guess I used to pick all the best shows out. It's one of those things.
So, but it's good to still see this one going after starting all those years ago.
Yeah, it's 50 years from the first show, so I've seen nearly every show, except last year when I couldn't go to the show because I was up in Norfolk because it was my granddaughter's wedding, and that was on the same weekend as this show, so that's the only show I've actually missed out of those 50.
Oh dear. So have you seen many changes, or is it pretty much the same over the years?
Well, the sections have changed. We used to have a wine section
Right.
because lots of people in the early days used to make their own wine. In fact, I still do. But that dropped out of sort of thing. The ladies used to be more floral art than what there is nowadays.
Right.
Because here again, myself and Mr. Sedge opened the first floral art meeting at the Ebenezer Hall many, many years ago. That was in the 1960s. I can't remember the exact year, but it was in the 1960s. And in them days, there used to be a lot of floral art because they didn't used to go and buy deer flowers like they do now from the nurseries and from Tesco's and places like this. They used to use all the flowers that was in the garden and the hedgerows and things like this. So I suppose that has changed because nowadays the floral art consists of, well, if you go to any of these big shows, you know they spend thousands of pounds on flowers.
Yeah.
As where in the old days, in the 1960s, they just used to, as I say, get them out the hedgerows and their gardens and things like this.
Well, thank you very much for speaking to us today.
Thank you.
So we're now joined with Jan and Malcolm here at the Monday Night Community Show. We're out and about and we're continuing to talk all about this year's Sheppey Horticultural Society's Flower and Vegetable Show. Firstly, thank you very much, both of you, for taking the time out to speak to me.
You're more than welcome.
Again. Good
That's
to see you
okay.
again.
Yes. Nice.
Well, yeah, it's good to see you because I spoke to you down on the allotments and that was before the show, so it's good to catch up with you during the show.
That's right.
Yep.
Yes.
So what actually did you enter in the end?
Well, there was quite a mixed bunch actually. We started off. I hoped to enter a flower arrangement, which I did, and I was growing at home at the time some indoor greenhouse cucumbers, which is a bit of a story too, but we'll come back to that. Then we went for a marrow, didn't we? Obviously, heavy marrow because it's sort of like just grew and grew. We did some potatoes, heavy potatoes, and
variety of potatoes.
Oh, variety of potatoes.
Yeah. We had a go at the heavy pumpkin, but I know people can't see, but behind us are two massive great pumpkins. The winning pumpkin was 73.5 kilograms, and we got the third at 10 kilograms. But we did the heaviest marrow, which came second, and then I entered a photograph, and I came first on that. And I also did a bit of cooking. I had a go at their Weetabix loaf, and I got a third for that. So we've done all right.
I was going to say, it sounds like you've done pretty well.
Yes, yeah, we've not done bad. But as I say, going back to the cucumbers, which were indoor cucumbers, which I grew at home in the greenhouse, they all seemed to come at once, and I didn't quite know which ones to bring down. And one of them was particularly big. I think it would have fed a family of 20. It was that large. And I was advised that they might class it as overripe. So what I did was I brought it down and gave it to the kitchen. Yeah, right. So we've had it for lunch. I think we've got it for tea. I think we've got it for dinner or something tomorrow. But I did have 2 more to put in as well, which fortunately I got a first on. So I was really, really pleased on that. Yes. Yeah.
I was going to say that's one of the things I think I'd worry about is, there's a set date for the show. How do you make sure your stuff's going to be ready or not overripe or not ready enough?
No, it is very difficult, isn't it?
I don't know if you remember when we were talking on the allotment patch, we said about how difficult everything had been this year. So I think the committee on the whole were very worried about what people were going to be able to show, but no, things have come along very well. We were lucky enough to have these few bits and pieces. There were 1 or 2 other things that we wanted to do, but they weren't ready, and that's just what I do. But other than that, everybody has done so well. They really have.
That's right. Yeah, because normally we've been able to enter large potatoes. Well, yesterday Malcolm managed to dig a whole row of potatoes up, which we duly took home and spread out on the patio to get some potatoes, but I'm afraid they just weren't big enough. Yeah, whereas last year we were able to put in potatoes weighing a lot, weren't we? Quite heavy. But that's just the way it goes, you know, so at least we entered them, and even if we didn't come anywhere. But I say the ones that did win, well, I think you could have chips for a week.
But on the whole, I mean, you know, it's been a very successful show, and we've enjoyed just doing the bits and pieces. Makes a bit of excitement for a week or two, but yeah.
Well, thank you very much for giving me an opportunity to catch up with you a couple of weeks later.
Yeah.
You're more than
see you
welcome.
again,
Nice to see you. Thank you.
Out and about, we're talking at the moment to Dave Hale from the Sheppey Horticultural Society. We're at their Golden Jubilee flower and vegetable show, and one of the things just off to the side of me is some hanging baskets. I understand that's a new thing to the show.
Well, it's actually double 50. It's one class 100. It's the first time we've introduced hanging baskets. By popular demand. I know there aren't hundreds and hundreds of them there, but unfortunately hanging baskets are of that kind of phenomenon. You've got to water them, and the fact that we've had a lot of sunshine recently means you've got to water them perhaps 2-3 times a day.
Yeah, no one's have needed that at home.
You've experienced this problem. I've had exactly the same problem with the fact that I came home one day and my wife actually said, take a slow trip down to the bottom of the garden because I'm afraid your one has frazzled. Mine was patriotic. It was red, white and blue, but it didn't seem to matter because it went a dirty brown. So it's a warning, actually, where hanging baskets, and they're very, very popular. You've only got to go anywhere on the island. You will see hanging baskets. Be aware that they need an awful lot of watering and care and attention. Not least during this hot weather that we've actually had. I was looking forward to exhibiting mine, but unfortunately it wasn't there. It can't be there simply because this one is actually interesting. If you look closely at it, it's not all flower.
I was going to say, is that lettuce growing?
It's lettuce. Actually, if you go around the other side in a minute, Daniel, you'll actually see something quite surprising. It's actually carrots.
Right.
And he got the idea from a well-known gardener.
Right.
And she said, why should it actually have just flowers in there? It can be just as decorative. We've spoken about this before, if you remember. Your garden can be just as decorative with having something which is actually edible in it as part and parcel of the garden itself. Very often, it will disguise the fact that the edible plant will be disguised in amongst the floral material, and the pests will override it. But on this particular occasion, that particular exhibitor has put lettuce, Lollo Rosso. You can see there's different colours there. But the other side is actually carrots, and the carrots are embedded in the basket itself. A grand idea. But then people grow tomatoes in hanging baskets. Lots of other things can actually be grown in hanging baskets. The only thing that I would say to people is be aware of the fact that the water and the moisture dissipates very quickly. You've either got to encounter that with globules, water globules and what have you, or be prepared to actually water it. The other problem you sometimes have, of course, is the fact, I can't be bothered, I won't do it for a couple of hours because it's very high. So you might want to bring it down to a level where you can actually water very easily. As I say, mine unfortunately frazzled, and that was only during the day. So yeah, it's a new exhibit that we've actually got this particular year. Hopefully that will grow, much like the other ones I was talking about. I don't mean to pun when I'm saying it's growing, in effect. The class will actually go. We'll get more exhibits, actually. Much like the others, which is the Sunday lunch for two and the 5 a day, which we found very important. Those two classes have grown. Hopefully we're looking for hanging baskets to grow exactly the same way. Simply because you can get them off the ground, they're very artistic, you can actually see them, and you don't have to provide a table for them. You can just hang them. But if you go and have a look at that one in a minute, the other begonia is there, but it's Lollo Rosso salad, lettuce and carrots on the other side. I think that's a grand idea, and why not? That's part of the fun of it, that you're doing something which is quite unusual, slightly different, and everybody's actually walked up and said, are carrots really growing out of that? He didn't leave the fronds on, which would have given the game away, but it made people walk up to it to have a look. Am I really seeing what I think I'm actually seeing there? But it's all part and parcel of the fun of the 50th anniversary, and we're very pleased to have had 50 grand shows. We've been very lucky over the last 2 or 3 years where we've put on a very, very good show. Lots of people have come, and it's good fun.
One of the things I always enjoy is coming along. I must say it's nice for you to come along on your 50th show and experience it and see all the stuff that's been grown throughout the year.
That's grand, even though it's been a very, very difficult year. As we've said already, I don't need to go over it again. But there are newcomers here this year, actually. Over 40 exhibitors, which is good news. And there's a good smattering of people who are new to this particular thing. What a lot of people think about that, they see the Chelsea show, they see the RHS shows, and they think, I can't compete with that. And sometimes it's a little bit harder getting through to them, saying it's a fun show, it's the Sheppey show, it's not Hampton Court, it's not Chelsea. We have fun doing it. There's no monetary value attached to it, but boy, if you get a little red sticker which says first class on the end, or first in that particular class, then fine. People walk away, they're happy, and that's what we try to engender, that it's good fun. But apart from the fact we have, within our rules, we must have a show every year. Long may it last. I hope it does actually last. And can I mention, if you're thinking of coming along and exhibiting in the show, which you can do for £1.50 by being a member of the Allotment Society or the Horticultural Society, £1.50, fine, come along. You can put things in which have grown in your garden. You'll notice some of the exhibits behind you there, the flowers, some of those, they won't have grown on an allotment. Being a member of the society means you can actually put your garden stuff in as well. So, if anybody's actually interested in becoming either an ordinary member or a member, or by virtue of wanting an allotment, actually, if I can mention Sue Underhill, our secretary, is always ready to actually take a call on 01795 661 547, and I remembered it this time. If you remember, we had a problem last time. I had to repeat it. Telephone numbers go out of your head on occasion. You think, what the heck is the number? 01795 661 547. We'd be delighted to see you. Friendly society, as you can tell from the buzz that's going on behind you. A lot of people are discussing, why did that win? Why didn't I get that win? That's part and parcel of it. That's the fun of it, Daniel. And it's delightful to see you here again.
No, thank you for inviting me. And I think I'm going to go and have a full look round now.
And get a cup of tea at the same time.
Yes, I will.
Good cup of tea for a very cheap price, I assure you.
As always, Dave, thank you very much.
No, as always, thank you for coming down and taking the time and trouble to come and see us, because we find it a delight, actually. And it's useful for the society.